Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the 116 Life on Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. I'm one of your hosts, Ace Harris, here with the amazing Meah Evans.
Oh man, you let me slide this week.
No, ain't gonna lie, you fresh. You killing it.
Nah, Ace, I've been trying to keep up. I'm not gonna lie. I love the colder weather is coming in too.
You did say that. You like warmer weather. You feel like you
Yeah.
can kind of get the fits off
Bro,
a little better.
the fits come out a lot.
Yeah, I feel like for some people, like the baggy, like the layers, it's just hit different.
And plus hoodie season is upon us, man. I love it. I'm all for it.
You thrift as well?
Oh yeah, all I do is thrift. I haven't been to a mall since the year started. I'm not even gonna hold you. I haven't.
Yeah, malls are kind of whack.
It's just like it's the thought of just getting what like everybody else is getting, and like I like the rare find. You know what I'm saying? Like you get it.
I get it. But we have an amazing special host. Guest today. Somebody that we've been trying to get on here for a minute.
Man. He's graced
the legendary, amazing Joe L. Barnes in the building.
I
don't know about legendary, but I'll take it.
Oh, of course. I mean, legendary to me, right? Whether y'all agree or not, that's on y'all's. That's for y'all to debate about. But man, I've been knowing you for about for almost 4 years now.
Yeah,
and
probably longer. Yeah,
I would say every interaction with him has been like amazing. You're just a sincere, true person. Yeah. Like sometimes you get with people who are one way, you know what I'm saying, on the platform.
Yeah.
And then not that it's bad, but off the platform, you're like, okay, love you, appreciate you. I don't know if we would like be able to like connect as friends. And that's not a judgment. It's just like, yo, I don't think I would be able to like go the distance with these people. But you, man, you just been a real solid dude, man. For me.
I appreciate it. I mean, I try to be the same way everywhere I go. You know what's crazy? My old mentor used to say this. He said that we need to embrace the lion and the lamb concept. Like when you're on the platform, you need to lead and be as loud as a lion about the gospel. When you're off the platform, you need to be as gentle and as lowly as a lamb. You have to be like presentable, like approachable, kind, all the things. And he was like, you can really tell where someone is at 2:00 in the morning when they're tired and they're hungry and they're like, that's when your character kind of shows because you have very little tolerance. So I think whenever we would have those moments, I would practice being kind and I would practice being like patient and all the things. Like so then it just became like a habit. But it was very difficult in the first season because I'm 20 years old. It's 2:00 in the morning. We're in a 15 passenger van with 17 people in it. Like it smells like all kinds of feet and bad breath at 2:00 in the morning because we're driving back and forth on the road. So I think like it's very easy to be irritable in those moments. But I think kindness is infectious, and I think I found out in those seasons like how to be kind in those seasons. So anyway,
I think it oozes out of you, bro, and it's like for some reason I feel like musicians have a reflex of a critique of how they, especially when you deal with people who never really deal with people behind the scenes, and there's just like this sometimes an unfair critique of people who are on platform and how they carry themselves. I get it because I get how, you know, someone coming off like a stage or doing a meet and greet after a long tour or performance, and you gotta like stand with a lot of people that you don't really know, and they're expecting this moment to be a really memorable exchange.
Yes.
And you're like, I'm just ready to get to the bunk and sleep.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but they are highlighting that moment, and so they're holding you to probably an unfair standard.
It's very unfair because the reality is like what people don't take into those moments into consideration is that most of the people that are on platforms are introverts. But this job, the priesthood, like being an artist, all the things requires you to be an extrovert. You have to be extroverted. So you have to kind of like take on an extroverted approach. So it's like you really are kind of like in the background, kind of like I stick to myself, I mind my business, I whatever. But in those moments, you kind of have to be like, hey, oh my God, tell me everything, and like be and like and a lot of times that's really draining for the introverts. And it's just like to deny yourself for the experience of the person on the other side is a very pivotal thing. But it's like it just depends on how you look at it. But also, I think that it is unfair in a lot of ways because I think what's also not taken into consideration is that you could have gotten the worst text of your life. And they don't know that. They have no context for that.
That's true.
So they're just like, oh my God, it's just great to meet the person that like wrote the song or did the song or that like
it's
changed everything
my life.
It's impacted my life. I just want to take this moment and get a picture so I can take it to my parents. My parents love you. My kids love you. My grandkids love you, whatever. And it's just like, you have no idea that I just got a text about my pops and I have to rush back home. But you need this 15 seconds for me to like talk and like take a picture and all the things. And it's like, I have to decide in that moment, do I be kind and be like, actually, to now is not a good moment, but then that marks them forever. I might not ever see that person
That's true.
again.
That's
and
true.
that 15 seconds of saying no could go miles. And now the narrative is he's not a kind person.
Sure.
He didn't have time for me.
It's crazy.
It's the craziest thing. But it's like if you do make the time and then somewhere along the lines the information comes out that it was the worst time of your life and you did it anyway, now it's like, oh, he's the kindest person ever because he didn't have to and his life was falling apart and yet and still he made time for me. And I think that is a testament of like the kindness of Jesus, but also like know your boundaries. Like it's a 50-50. Like
sure,
don't
agree.
push past your boundaries. Don't like, you know, chip
Exhaust
away at yourself.
yourself.
Don't exhaust yourself.
Sure.
But like it's kind of a toss up of how to handle those scenarios because
Yeah.
you just never know how it's gonna go.
Because some people may be like, hey, yeah, and one more thing, Joel.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
20 minutes later,
Yeah.
shoot,
Yeah.
an hour later, you're
Yeah,
like, bro,
usually that's why I keep my team with me because my management can be kind of rude when it's so that I don't have to be. So I have like a little signal that I'll give them, like, "Hey, I need you to come and like rescue me." Like I have a signal that I'll give them that nobody knows, and they'll be like, "Hey, Joe, I need you real quick. I'm so sorry, y'all. He has to." And people are more understanding about that
for sure,
than
for
they
sure.
are about.
I know you're better than me because that's I'd be like, as the conversation's going really well, I'm actually really
I'm like,
tired.
all right, I'm gonna let you go.
I'm gonna let you. I gotta do
me.
better. I gotta
Yeah.
be more kind. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I feel like it's just good to have you, man. I feel like it's gonna be
Thank
a
you for
great
having me.
conversation.
Yeah, man. There's a lot. This has been a real eventful year for you. Talk about just the season of life you're just in right now.
Man, I'm in rest mode, man. I think I've just been trying to rest and recoup. I just got a new spot, so I'm just like,
Congrats.
Congratulations.
so I'm like
A
trying
house?
to, yeah, like a
I
little
think
town,
that's-
like a little town home, yeah, yeah. I'm just like getting the piece together. Like my couch just came in this week, and I just put my table together, and like I'm trying to get a rug for my living room, like trying to get a coffee table. I'm just like putting the pieces together, which is interesting because what most people don't know, it's my first time in 30 years of living by myself. So that's
Really?
a whole nother thing. So it's like I'm just enjoying like the solitude and like
Whoa.
making the entire house my own. And I saw this post by Jackie years ago of like watching an empty house become full of things piece by piece. There's something about the patience in that, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting to actually live in and
phenomenal.
all the things. So like, I think that's what's new. I think I'm just kind of like resting because I've been on the move a lot. I'm in learn mode. I'm always in learn mode. I'm always trying to learn something new. I'm always trying to like acquire new information or learn something different. Yeah, I'm in creative mode, trying to like just write, just to like turn the faucet on.
For
But,
sure.
Yeah, that's where I'm at this season.
What does turn the faucet on mean? Can you say more about that? Like,
Well, Ed Sheeran talks about this, and he was just like, as a songwriter, sometimes you have to turn the faucet on. You're gonna write a lot of bad songs, but muddy water might come out the faucet in the beginning, so you're gonna write a lot of bad songs. But eventually, as the water runs, fresh water will come out, and then once the faucet's turned on, it's just on, and you'll be writing out records, and then before you know it, you'll have a season where it almost seems like you can't miss. I know that's kind of weird to say
No,
as a
I'm with
songwriter,
it.
but it's just like you'll start writing things and then it'll start to like flow a little bit more easy because you've gotten all your bad songs out the way. So I think I'm turning the faucet on, just writing and writing and writing just to like get all the muddy water out so that I can
that's like a great analogy.
fresh water. So yeah.
That's a super great analogy. And like in terms of this life stage, I feel like you've been through so much like career transitions. I mean, I feel
That's
like
an understatement. Yeah.
yeah, it's an understatement.
Yeah.
Tell me why that's your response when I say that understatement. Tell me how that can be even more like further explained. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, like it has been a lot of transition. I feel like I've been in transition of like as far as like career and life for like the past like 2 years. I think 22 was a pivotal year. Like I separated from my old company. I separated from Mav that January 22, and I told no one. Like I kind of just like snuck out the back door. I didn't post about it. I didn't tell any of the public. They were on tour, all the things. Like people just were guessing, like playing a guessing game because I wasn't around. But I had told the owners at the time, like I won't do Kingdom album. I won't do tour. Like I'm just gonna like go home and be present with my people. And which a whole other thing is that got me into a lot of trouble. But whatever, I won't talk about that. But I think that was transition for me because I was just like, me and the Lord had to sit with that. I'm like, God, I don't understand. Like I love my people. Like I love the artists. Like I love the people I'm on the floor with. But God was like, no, I think there's more things you need to pay attention to as far as like your family. your family needs you, your little brother needs you, like
Whoa.
your people around you kind of need your presence. Like, because when I'm working, I get tunnel vision, so I kind of like had to step away from it all. So that was transitional. And then 22, I had like one of the worst breakups of my life. Like I like sat in the dark for 2 months because I was just at my lowest. You know what I mean? But it was a really hard season then. And then 23, I moved. I was like, it was a lot of things that happened, like 22, 23, and then even in 24, like 23, we recorded my first album. 24, we just dropped it. So I think that's probably like one of the big highlights. We dropped my first like album, like outside of any kind of like feature, because everything up until that point was in like feature or like collaboration. You know what I mean? Like collaborating with Elevation, collaborating with Israel, collaborating with like all the different. So like my first actual record that we sat down, we created, like me telling like what's on my heart and what's in my head. Very scary for me.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you seem so like very easygoing and chill. I'm trying to imagine a space where you would be, I guess, nervous or like.
Well, it's because like there's this like contradiction that you have to kind of live in as an artist when you're releasing your project, because you have to have this thing of like, I really couldn't care any less what you think or what you feel or what you like have to say about my album, but also I need you to love the album and listen to the album and stream it and buy the tickets and buy the merch. Like it's like to protect my heart, I have to like release it and not really care about if you love it or hate it, but also I need you to love it because that's what like it needs to go everywhere. If you love it, you'll tell someone and then they'll get what they need. But also like it was a little nerve-wracking because of that, but also this album was designed for people like us that are in positions of authority and reach and influence. Like we a lot of times are so responsible for depositing into people. Very rarely do we have a place to like let our hair down, be vulnerable, and like be deposited into. A lot of times our vulnerability is used as a weapon against us. So I think
say more. That's yeah.
Well, like a lot of times when we talk to our leaders or when we talk to our pastors, when we talk to our person or whatever about like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, or this is what I've struggled with, or this is whatever. It's like, oh, okay. And then later on, it's weaponized. Later on, it's used in a sermon and it's preached across the pulpit. It's like, we just had that conversation and now I feel exposed and now I feel abused and now I feel mishandled because you use something that I gave to you in confidence as a talking point in a sermon or as a weapon against me in an argument. And it's like, we never have safe spaces. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially in Christendom, like
For sure.
if someone gets caught up in infidelity or whatever in mainstream, it's like, dang, that sucks, but that's like expected. In Christendom, if you do that, everything shuts down. No church wants to have you lead worship or preach at their conferences. Everybody like stops listening to your music. You're completely canceled. Everything shuts down. Your pastors sit you down for 2 years, and it's just like, they're met with so much like repercussion and so much like consequence that it's like a lot of people hide. They don't even want to expose it. Like, I know what that comes with. And it's like, if more people were actually met with love, met with warm embrace, met with like, hey, look, I love you and I'm going to walk with you through this. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get in the mud with you and help you clean this up. Like, yes, there is consequences for your decisions. However, a lot of people are met with the consequences. They're never met with love. They're met with wrath and told that it's love, and that's not the same thing. You see what I'm saying? Like, so people don't want to open up and expose themselves, and I think like that. But that's the only way that you're actually going to receive healing and breakthrough. If you like, my apostle preached about Naaman, about how he was decorated and he was very known, but no one in the land would trade skins with him because he had leprosy, and he was like, leprosy is not the infection of skin. Leprosy is the numbing of skin, and there's a pus that grows underneath the skin. You pick at it, and it causes the skin to break, and the infection gets in, and that's what kills people. He's like, a lot of people are dealing with a spiritual numbness because they won't expose themselves. So they're leading worship, and they're preaching messages, and they're doing all the things in the ministry, but they're numb. Nothing in them is moving. The room is moving. Their internal world isn't moving. Jeez. And he's like, in the text, it talks about how he had to go expose himself to the man of God. The man of God tells him to dip himself in the Jordan, and he's like, that doesn't make sense. He's like, his men are like, if he would actually do something hard, you would have done it. Anyway, fast forward, he's like, the only way for you to receive healing and breakthrough for your internal world that's decaying is you have to expose yourself to men of God that like love you and dip yourself in the water, which is presence. Men that are presence seekers, men that have that the river is flowing, you dip yourself in the water and you wash yourself in the water, and then you'll receive breakthrough and healings for your internal world. Because there's a lot of people that are decaying on the inside, but they're leading the charge. They're leading the churches. They're killing it. God is showing up because he's going to show up for his people, but their internal world are falling apart. No, they're decorated. They got all the awards. They got all the Grammys. They got all the accolades. They're doing massive arenas and tours and all the things. Their internal world is falling apart. Their marriages are falling apart. Their children want nothing to do with them. Their children want nothing to do with ministry. You see what I'm saying? And it's just like...
Wait, what's that about? It's like...
Because a lot of times we hear the thing of like, oh, preachers' kids are the worst. It's not that they're the worst. It's just that most preachers don't know how to be parents to their kids. They're always their kids' pastors, which is a whole other thing we don't have to get into. But
no,
I'm
that's
saying that
good,
to say,
man.
Saying that to say, like, this record was designed to lead people back to the shepherd so that he can wash them in the waters and that they can find refreshing for their soul. Like, when we're in positions of leading worship, preaching sermons, doing podcasts, people that are behind the scenes making the thing move, we're the ones in the kitchen cooking. And there are people coming up with their hands out and their plates empty saying, give me something. But no one ever comes to us and saying, are you hungry? Have you been fed? Have you been washed? Have you been nourished? And I'm like, this album was designed to lead the way to the shepherd that can lead them beside the still waters, that can lead them to the green pastures, that can anoint their heads with oil, that will literally heal the wounds internally and externally, the self-inflicted trauma that comes from you trying to get it out yourself, so that you have peace at night when you sleep, so that you have peace instead of anxiety, so that you don't have any more depression. You have no more suicidal thoughts. Because I think I was really marked by how many phone calls and text messages that I had received about me and my husband are separated. Me and my wife are getting a divorce. I'm having the darkest thoughts of my life. I'm in the darkest days of my life, and I'm weeping, and I'm like, God, we have to do something. And then God had started to unravel the 23rd Psalm. So we decided to write about it and sing about it and put it into a record that we could give to people that are in these positions of authority. And it's like, I have nowhere to turn to. Well, now we've provided a place for God to be found and discovered in the form of an album, so that you by yourself can meet with the shepherd. You don't need someone to come lay your hands on you.
You don't, yeah.
You just need to be by yourself with the shepherd. So
actually, I want to get into the deeper under workings of the Good Shepherd, because I have some things I wanted to pull out to talk about. But this is really good. This is the 116 Life Holy Culture Radio, Sirius Channel 140. We'll be right back, y'all. Welcome back, y'all. This is the 116 Life Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. I'm here with Meah Evans, Joel Barnes, and we just are just kind of talking it out about how I love deep conversations. So this is great for me. And speaking of deep, me and Meah was just obviously listening to the album. And I ain't gonna lie, sometimes when I see an interlude, I sometimes like browse through it. I ain't listen the way I could have or should have. But this morning, I pulled up the Good Shepherd testimony part. Yeah. Bro, tear came out. No, this is not cap, yo. This is not for the camera, man. I got watery eyed just hearing that testimony, man. Yeah. I don't even know if I want to rehash it, but because we'll be here for like 2 hours. But let me just say what I took away from it. Yeah. In the story you're telling, you're talking about how two preachers were preaching the 23rd Psalm. Yes. One like real gospel, like old school preaching, black church style, was doing all that, and the crowd was going crazy. And then a more seasoned pastor gentleman gets up there and quotes the 23rd Psalm without any like charisma, but just from the heart. And people were moved to tears, and the gentleman who spoke the loud, charismatic version comes to the seasoned gentleman afterwards and says, "How did you get people to respond to this same passage that I just preached with all this eloquence and all that?" And the older gentleman says to the younger gentleman, "You know the Psalms, but I know the shepherd." Yes. And I was like, yes. Sorry, I just gotta sit right there for a second.
It's literally one of my favorite stories. It's one of my favorite stories. It's
know the Psalm.
You know the Psalm very well. I know
the shepherd.
And that's a good thing, but I know the shepherd. And that's the difference.
All right, talk about that as a backdrop for the album, and then also the part about the oil. I think that's just so important.
I just think like I was listening when he told the story, I literally couldn't focus on anything else, because I was like I said in the story, I was at a conference and he told me about it, and I was like, I never thought to think of you as the shepherd. I've thought about the Lord in so many ways. You know what I mean? And I think I grew up in a very legalistic, city. Very, very, for lack of a better word, very Baptist, very legalistic, no women preachers, no, like just a bunch of things, right? So I grew up subconsciously thinking that God was angry all the time and Jesus had to calm him down. And if I did,
Jesus had to come.
yes, because he stood on the right hand of the
Pops,
Father.
I need you to
Yeah.
that's
tone it
funny.
down a little bit,
That
man.
he took
Your
out
children.
that he took out all of his anger and wrath on the Lord, on Jesus, from me, that he wanted to take out on me. It's like, so he's angry, and my older brother had to take the beating so that I didn't. And I'm like, that's how I believed it. And I'm like, but then our apostle started talking about things. He was like, but if you look at some things in scripture, that doesn't make sense. He would just talk about how, like, you can't sit there and say that God hates us and that he's angry when the scripture says that for God so loved the world that he gave, not for Jesus so loved the world that he convinced his Father to let him go. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
You can't sit there and think that he's angry, ready to strike you whenever Jesus is sitting there with the woman caught in the act of adultery.
Yeah.
And the Pharisees are like, the law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say? And he says, pause right there. Moses only got to see a fraction of the Lord through the cleft of a rock. Jesus is the embodiment of God in the flesh. He is fully God and fully man. Who do you think has a better revelation about how the Father would have that moment? Moses, who only got to see a glimpse of him, or Jesus, who is everything God has to say about himself? You see what I'm saying? You can't think that God is angry and distant and Jesus is loving and kind, and then he says, when you see me, you see the Father. Those things they contradict.
Sure.
So whenever we sat there, and I'm like, I've never thought of you as the shepherd. And I'm like, sheep are defenseless. I started reading a book called The Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23. Sheep are defenseless. Their only defense mechanism is to run. They have to rely on the shepherd for everything. For their food, for their shelter, for their water, for shading, to protect them even from insects. Even from the nose flies, because God designed our bodies to protect us from a lot of things. We have nose hair to protect us from dust and insects from getting into our body. They don't even have that. You see what I'm saying? So nose flies will try to land and plant eggs in their nostrils, and if they're successful, the eggs will hatch and bury themselves in the flesh of the nostril canal and even to the brain. So then sheep will bang their heads against rocks and against trees and against any hard surface because there's an internal struggle that they can't get freedom from. And the shepherd will see that and will take oil and anoint their head. What that means is he'll submerge their head in oil. The oil will reach into the nostril canal and then up into the brain and pull out all of the larvae and all of the eggs and everything, pulling all of that out. It loosens it all up and pulls it out. It provides a layer of protection to seal around the nostril so that doesn't happen again. But the oil also heals the wounds and the trauma and that was left behind from them banging their heads on a rock. Because sometimes the sheep will die because they bang their head against the rock too much and it kills them in the process. So it's suicidal. Yeah. So when I'm sitting there reading this, I'm a mess. But then God was like, look around at your industry. Look around at your peers. There's a lot of depression. There's a lot of suicide. There's a lot of people doing things that are not becoming and not befitting of who they are as a person. But that's them trying to bang their heads against the rock to get everything that's tormenting them out. They're trying to find peace and comfort at the bottom of a bottle. They're trying to find peace and comfort in bed to bed with another person. You don't just land in these places just because you want to. There's a lot of internal struggles that you're dealing with. Their souls are tormented. And I'm weeping. I'm like, God, I need you to anoint our heads. Mine and my peers. Mine and my mom and my dad and my little brother. There's a lot of trauma and things that has happened to us and that we've tried to get out ourselves. Because the thing is, the flies is something else happening to us. But then afterwards, I'm left with the internal struggles and the trauma on the inside of my head. And I'm the one that's I feel responsible for getting it out myself. It's I was always taught in therapy, what happened to you wasn't your fault, but it is your responsibility to fix. But in the kingdom, it's not your responsibility. It's the shepherd's. I feel the Lord.
Oh my gosh.
So I think it messed me up. I'm like, God, I need you to anoint our heads with oil. We need to there's a dependency that you're forced into when you look at him as the shepherd. Yes. It's
we're helpless.
You lead me beside still waters. You know what I'm saying? Even if I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you're with me. The sheep will literally never lay down until they sense the presence of the shepherd in the field. Then they lay down because they're I know everything's taken care of. My food, my water, my shelter, my protection, provision. You're going to protect me from the heat of the sun. You're going to protect everything. I will lay down now. Because I know I don't have to even worry. I can see a fox or a wolf afar off, and I know that your rod and your staff won't even let them near me.
Bruh.
You see what I'm saying? So it's oh, wow. All of that started unraveling, and I'm like, Lord, we need to sing about this. We need to write about
That's
this.
so
we need
good,
to give this to my peers.
Tadashi gave a dope perspective when he was in Israel to kind of stay on the 23rd Psalm again about First of all, that chapter is so dense with so many layers.
Oh,
and so,
bro.
It's so connected to God's heart and
bro.
the sheep and shepherd metaphor and motif. But he was saying how, like, I ain't gonna lie, when I heard that scripture as a kid, leads me to green pastures. I always had a vision of like flourishing. I'm talking about vegetation.
Yeah.
Like, that was my view
Yeah.
when I read that and how I was taught that. I was like, oh yeah, the sheep out here, you know, they are being provided for. It's green. They're good. And Tadashi gave this perspective when he came back from Israel. He was like, man, I've been over there where the sheep be, and it's shrubs, fam.
It's shrubs. It's desert.
It's desert. And he was just like, to lead me to green pastures is like, you're literally going from shrub to shrub. Like, there's not sustenance in the land.
Yeah.
And so the sheep cannot find a place to eat without the shepherd, because they will literally die.
They would die.
So it's not like this vast place of vegetation and
No.
greenery. And I was like, dang, this is kind of life, basically.
Yeah.
Like, life is a wilderness.
Yes.
It is a wilderness. And I don't know who taught us or who misled us to think that we're, like, obviously we want to bring heaven on earth. And I'm just saying, we're going through. We haven't arrived yet.
Yeah.
And I think that reality forces us to be dependent on the shepherd who only can lead us and navigate us through the desert. So
because another thing is, like, because it's so, like, the green pastures are so few and far between, you can't let them overgraze here, otherwise it would literally no longer cease to exist. So you have to find several places so that when you get here, they're fed, they're watered, and then you travel to the next space. And so by the time you circulate through them, they've all grown and all the things. Because, like, for example, if you cut grass, it's going to take a week for it to grow back, right? But, like, when they graze, they will eat until you tell them to stop. Until you tell them to stop, they will, or it'll all be gone. So you have to, like, monitor how much they intake and then take them to the next spot and move and shake, because it's, like you said, it's desert between the two. So them on their own wandering, one, they're like, the wool on them will literally, like, overgrow. So you have to tend to that. You got to make sure it gets cut down. Otherwise, they'll get caught and stuck in cactus and thickets and all the content. They'll get stuck in places. So you have to, like, cut that down. It's really a tedious job to be a shepherd. But it's like,
that's like,
it's so,
it's
bro.
a tedious job to be a shepherd.
It's tedious.
I'm just sitting on that. But yeah, I think so much to get into.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna lie to you.
me.
I'm sitting here. I have so many thoughts. I'm honestly resting in even what you said last segment, because even hearing you talk about, of course, the revelation you got on sheep and the good shepherd, and then hearing your intentionality, which is so moving about the project. It's just it's something about being seen, at least for me, that is so important to people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And especially when you're creating not even just art, but doing something for God's body to be able to receive for a specific niche of people. I don't know. It's something about that just is so, I don't know, it kind of makes me emotional even hearing you say that. Just the intentionality behind you wanting people to feel seen, to feel wanting to be vulnerable, and even thinking about even just sheep in general, just about how a shepherd has just tons of sheep, and even, like, you know, that going back to, like, the 99 one, even being left off and then being even going off to go see that. Was there ever, like, moments for you, just like, I guess it's just in your life, where you needed those seen moments? You know what I'm saying? Like, where you wanted to be seen, you didn't maybe feel as maybe not as many eyes were on you in that moment, whether it's in music or just maybe in family, faith, or anything like that, where this project would have spoken to that part of you. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a few seasons where, like, this project would have spoken to me. I mean, if one, it spoke to me first because I was at my lowest anyway. Like I was literally at my lowest. Like I said, this project came right when, like, I was, like, in the middle of the worst breakup of my life. That's where it started. Like, the breakup happened in the end of 22. That's when the conference happened. That's when God started talking to me and unraveling the 23rd Psalm. And then we took all of 23 to write it and create it. But, like, I had to sit in that 2 months in the dark. I sat with this, like, and let God, like, remind me of who he is and, like, remind me of our friendship and remind me of how like we're all just sheep in the hands of the good shepherd. Because I think a lot of times we take on the shepherding role. If we're leading the charge, if we're pastoring, if we're preaching, if we're singing, if we're doing the things, if we're songwriting, if we're A&R and whatever, like we're basically just like shepherding people. But I think we need to be reminded that we're all sheep in the hands of the good shepherd. Like, yeah, God might use us to lead the sheep and lead the way a lot of times, but like we're still following his lead. You know what I'm saying? Like I think I learned from like Stephanie Gretzinger, like the Holy Spirit is my worship leader. I am not a worship leader. I am, but it's like the Holy Spirit is the worship leader. I follow his leading. I follow the Lord. And I think in seasons of ministry, I think I've been burnt out. I've been like fried. I've been like, I'm tired because I'm out literally depositing. But it's like I'm afraid to like open up and let any kind of pastoral person like speak into my life. I have pastors that speak in my life now. I'm submitted under covering now, but it took me a while to like trust it, because my first experience with like covering was not so great. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I honor everything, good, bad, and ugly, because it all led to me to being where I am, and it taught me how to trust and lean and depend on the Lord. That my covering is a voice, but not the voice of God in my life. You see what I'm saying? Like, they just teach me how to hear from God accurately. But I sit in my closet with the Lord by myself, and then whenever, without talking to my covering, they confirm what God is already speaking to me. That's how I know it works, right? So I think for me, I'd had moments of being mishandled by covering, so I didn't trust it. It's like I feel God is leading me this way, and at the time my covering back, this is like 2018, like didn't agree. So then my vulnerability was turned into a sermon and it was kind of used against me. And I'm like, okay, never. It's like once you do that, never again. You see what I'm saying? So I think I've had moments where I'm like, I just needed to be heard. I just need to be seen. I just need to be understood. Like, even if you don't like it.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because here's the thing. Obedience to God doesn't mean that you like what he's asking of you. I don't have to like it to obey. I don't have to like what God is asking of me in order to obey him. That's not, if you need to like what he's asking you to obey, then I would question your maturity in the faith. I would question your maturity in God if you have to like what he's asking of you. I don't have to like what God is asking me. I just have to do it, because I might not always understand it. But I trust that he knows what he's doing, even if I don't like it, even if I don't understand it. You know what I'm saying? Like, Moses did not want to go.
That's true.
You see what I'm saying? Jonah did not want to go. Went the other way. You see what I'm saying? There's a lot of people that God asked to do things, and they're like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that. Moses tried to talk his way out of it. Like, I have a stuttering problem. He's like, I don't care. You see what I'm saying? Like, whenever like people would look at God and like try to question, he was like, were you there when I hung the stars? Were you there when I did this? Like, you need to trust me. Like one of my favorite scenes is like Prince of Egypt. He's like, Moses, like, you don't understand. He's like, who made man's mouth? Who made the deaf, the mute, the seeing, and the blind? Was it not I? Like, it was me. Like, I don't have to like it to obey. So I think I just have had moments of lowness, and I'm like, I know what it's like to need a place to go. And sometimes you don't even trust anybody yet. So even if you don't trust anybody yet, you could sit in your room by yourself, listen to this album from top to bottom, and be reminded that, one, God will travel any road to get to you.
That's so good.
But two, he's coming with fresh water. He's going to lead you to the green pastures. Even through the wilderness, it's going to be hot. It's going to be dry sometimes, but there's refreshing coming. There's food coming. There's provision coming. There's like protection coming. Like, it's okay. Just sit with the Lord. God will lead you to the covering you're supposed to be under. Because this is the thing. God will even use covering that's not necessarily the best to sand down things in you and to prepare you for what's next.
That's true.
I read a book called The Tale of Three Kings, and it talks about how Saul is chucking spears at David. And no one can stop him because he's the king. And I was pissed reading this book until it was like, well, God was using Saul to get whatever that was like Saul in David out. So when David became king, he was nothing like Saul, but he needed Saul as the sandpaper to sand it down. So even bad covering, God will honor your submission to bad covering if you're willing to submit.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear that. I don't have to like it. You see what I'm saying? David could have killed him. He cut the cloth. And he was like, I could have taken your life, but you're still God's anointed. And I have to, I can't. You see what I'm saying? Even though you try to kill me on a daily.
I feel like justified, but I can't.
Justified, but I can't because you're God's anointed. So I think like, yes, I've been in those moments of lowness. And I think this album like spoke to me first. And I'm like, I won't give somebody something that I haven't sat with first. I'm not going to hold you to a standard that I don't hold myself to. I'm not going to ask something of you that I won't do. And I won't give you an album that hasn't already ministered to me. So anyway.
That's good. What's the 116 Life, Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM? This is a great conversation. We'll be right back, y'all. Welcome back, y'all. This is the 116 Life, Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. And I'm here just talking with Joel and Meah, and I was saying how I was so moved by the Good Shepherd testimony, Into the Good Shepherd. You said that 3-part of the album is like you can't listen to it driving because you might have to pull over for tears. But I ain't gonna lie. I mean, I ain't gonna say I'm the most emotional dude, but I'm like, when the Spirit speaks, you're like, yo, what is, it's uncontrollable. So, and I was just moved by how the sheep, they actually end up killing themselves trying to like bang the pain out. Yeah. And it's like, these are sheep. Yeah. It's the pain is so intense that they're just trying to, and the backdrop of how us in our human ways do the same thing. And I was just, it's so powerful, man. Can you share a little bit more about that and how that connects to your own family story?
I mean, like I said, like I think it's a crazy concept to think like a lot of, whenever God was like, look at your peers, I started backtracking. Like I said, I got phone calls after phone calls of like separations and divorce and depression and like people telling me that they've like contemplated like taking their own lives. And I'm like, and I told you, like, it's something I don't play with. Like I lost my brother to suicide in 2011. So for me, it's a very serious matter. I'm like, I will make space in my house. Like come sleep on the couch or in the guest room or whatever. Like don't face that alone. It's one thing I will not play about. And I think, like I said, like I'm not the shepherd, but I can lead you to him. You see what I'm saying? Like my prayer was, God, anoint our heads with oil. Like there's a lot of my peers, a lot of my friends that are fighting secret battles that no one knows about. They're shedding silent tears that no one knows about because they shed their tears at night. They fall asleep, they get up the next day, they wash their face and they go out and they're smiling, they're happy-go-lucky, but they're at their wits' end. Their internal worlds are decaying and they're like, I can't let anybody know this because one, like I said earlier, it'll be used as a weapon against me, or I'll be met with shame. I'll be met with like consequences or heavy, like, you know what I'm saying? And I don't want that. So I think whenever I was praying like, God, anoint our heads with oils, because the oil is the only thing that will, one, bring relief to the internal struggles. And it will remind us that life is actually worth the living. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think it's a really, really big deal for me. And I don't play with it. So yeah, I'm like, this album is not the shepherd, but it is a signal flare. It is the breadcrumb. It is the thing that will lead you to the shepherd. It is this place where we designed it to be in what Stephanie calls an altar. She's like, we create altars in the form of songs that God can use and breathe on, and it becomes a table for the world to come and feast and dine with him, right? So I think the album is a place for him to be found and discovered, because he also told her, I'm better at being found and discovered than you are at introducing me. So this is not an introduction. This is an altar that can be a table that he can be found and discovered at. You see what I'm saying? The original design of an altar was a meeting place with the Lord. Noah steps off the ark and builds an altar, a stack of stones, and says, God, anytime I remember where you brought us from out of this flood, I'm going to come to this designated area and I'm going to meet with you. Knowing that when I get here, you'll be here waiting on me. You see what I'm saying? So I think that these altars in the form of songs, in the form of albums, God's there waiting on you to pull up your chair so that he can meet with you, and he'll tend to your wounds. He'll tend to your internal garden. He'll tend to your, like, and reality is, without you ever even have to look at it. My pastor told me this, and I'll never forget it. He said that he used to just go on walks with Jesus in the mornings, and he would come back and he would like search his heart and things would be adjusted. He was like, Jesus told him, when you walk with me, you'll discover that my Father's an excellent gardener. You think that you have to pull your own weeds out of your garden. You think you have to cut down the things, but then when you walk with me, you come back, there are less weeds and you didn't pull them up. There are more lilacs and more lilies and you didn't plant them. Why? Because the Father's an excellent gardener. What Chandler said in one of the records, he's a gentle surgeon. Like, you will never even notice that he was doing the internal work, because all you were doing was fixing your eyes on Jesus and walking with him. You see what I'm saying? So anyway.
I think when you said this in the album about how at the listening party at a portrait, you were saying how a friend you were having just natural dialogue, and how you were inspired one of the songs about how there's one more seat at the table and it has your name on it. and you saying, even talking about your heart, which I can relate to, when it comes to people who are just going through internal struggles, things like suicide and things like that. What did it look for you? I guess a double part question is, what did it look for you? What did it look like to you when you had friends who were going through those internal struggles and you leading them to back to God, or leading them back to Jesus, or away from those internal struggles? And then also, what did it look like when the tables were turned for you, in a sense?
I think for me, I've only done it the way that like people have done it for me, like that worked. I think being present a lot of times does more than a lot of talking. I think sometimes just being in the room, whenever a lot of my peers or my people were at their lowest, I'm like, I'm just coming to the house. We don't have to talk. We don't have to do anything. If you're ready to talk, I'm ready to listen, and we can unpack it. But sometimes just not being alone makes the biggest difference. Sometimes it's like, I know what's happening, and we can unpack it whenever you're ready. I'm not going to force you into a conversation, but I am going to show up and be present. So let's sit and let's talk. Let's play games. Let's kick it, all the things. Let me remind you how beautiful life can be, because I think that for me, this is going to be a very controversial thought, but I think that suicide is not, it's basically the removal of any chance for life to get better. You see what I'm saying? Like, life has an opportunity to get better, but if you end it too soon, then you remove the opportunity for God to show you that life can get better, and it will get better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think, but I understand how sensitive the subject is, and I don't play with it. But I think, like, for me, someone just being present when I was ready to talk. It's like, hey, look, I'm just here whenever you're ready to talk, but I'm not leaving you.
Yeah.
And I think that reminder of like, hey, you're not alone. Sometimes people hearing a record, it's like, oh, I'm not the only person that went through this.
Yeah.
I feel seen. I feel understood. I feel like heard. A lot of times we feel alone in these things. Like,
sure.
I'm the only person dealing with this. Like, oh, no, you're not. You're not the only person. There's a lot of people out here like struggling with this, and we see you, we know, and we love you. And like, come sit at the table, come talk, come hang out, come play cards. We'll unpack it when you're ready. When you're ready to open up, and then you'll be met with something different than what you thought you were going to be met with. You're not going to be met with like anger. You're not going to be met with rage. You're going to be met with so much love and affection and kindness. You're going to be met with so much understanding and peace and grace. Like, oh no, I get it. I understand. What do you need? Do you need me to be more intentional about calling you more? Do you need me to be more intentional about how affectionate I am? Do you need me to be more inquisitive and ask you a bunch of questions? What do you need? What are your love languages, and how can I show up for you? You know what I'm saying? So
I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
How you seem like someone who's come out of a lot of storms, and you've like you said the word mature faith earlier, and it kind of like it's clear that you're walking in a mature understanding of who God is, which is phenomenal. I feel like there's people my age and older who still don't really have a clear picture of who the Father is. What was your upbringing like? Like, obviously, this is not an overnight thing, but what was your upbringing like? What was the backdrop of Joel, the young kid, the teenager, the high schooler that shaped a little bit about what I'm seeing today?
I'll be honest, I was a heathen, man. I was outside. Like, my mom was the evangelist of the church. Like, and it was a home church from like my aunt, my uncle, my cousin are still the pastors of my church back in Kentucky. Like, and knew about the Lord, didn't get serious until like into high school, going into my 20s, like around 18, 19, 20, like that's when I got serious about the Lord. Graduated high school, 18, 19, 20 is when I started getting really more in serious about the Lord. Cause like, I think after the death of my brother, I watched my mother run to the Lord instead of blaming him for it. You see what I'm saying? That made the biggest difference. Anytime that in life that I've seen people get the worst text or have something heavy, they're usually like, Lord, if you let this happen, I'll never forgive you. Or they never want to talk to the Lord again because they expected him to do something and it didn't go that way. And it's like, nope, I'll never forgive. And it's like, my mom was like, I don't understand what's happening, but God, I trust you in it, and I trust you'll carry me through it. And then she believed for resurrection. Up until the point we put his casket in the ground, she's like, I'm believing God for resurrection. If I read about it and the stories that I read are true, I'm believing he'll do it. So it's like, that's when I was like, okay, that shows me where her faith is anchored. And I think I need to get serious about this man named Jesus, because if he's able to do that for her in the face of this, there's no telling what he can carry me through. So I think that's when I began to get really serious about my walk with the Lord. And it has been a journey. You know what I mean? It's been a very interesting journey for the last 15, 20 years. You know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, I think my mom always said, stay with the Lord no matter where you go, high or low, doesn't matter, stay with him. And as you stay with him, you learn more about him, you learn more about yourself, you learn more about the culture around you. I'm a very audio learner. I listen to things and I hear things and I'm like, I pay attention, I acquire information that way. So when I hear something that sticks out to me, I'm like, ooh, let me nosedive on that, figure out where that leads to. Or if God is speaking something, I'm like, oh, you have my ear. Where are you leading me? So I think you have to know your Bible. That's a whole other thing. You have to know the text. If you know the text, you'll know his nature.
That's so.
If you know the text, you'll know his character.
We can't say that enough.
You know what I'm saying? You have to know the text. Most people go to church and hear the rhetoric, and it's like they know Christianese. They don't know the text. It's a whole different thing. It's like if you don't know the text, you'll be easily fooled into things. It's like you got to know the text, because when you know the text, you'll know the character of the Lord. Because here's the reality. The ink and parchment is a word from God. Jesus is the word. He's the living word. Whenever it talks about in the beginning was the word, it was not talking ink and parchment. It was talking about Jesus, the living embodiment of. You see what I'm saying? So as you read the text, you get to know Jesus, and you get to know how he speaks, how he moves, how he thinks, how he breathes. And then God can start to reiterate the text, to reiterate his nature and his character, because the word is infallible. You see what I'm saying? So I think all of that leads to maturity. It's like you have to understand, as you grow, you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. This is what it means by your ways are higher and your thoughts are better. This is what it means.
For sure.
Oh, I don't have to fully understand. You see a different vantage point than I do. And when it's my time to see it, you'll show it to me. Until then, I have to trust your leadership, because if I'm out here on my own, I'll never find that green pasture to feed myself. I'll be eating cactus and it'll hurt on the way down. You see what I'm saying? You lead me to where the still waters is. Otherwise, because a lot of times that water is really infested with all kinds of bacteria and germs that will kill the sheep. Only the shepherd knows where the fresh water is, where the clean water is. You see what I'm saying? I have to depend on you. Otherwise, I'll be drinking water that'll actually poison me. I'll be eating things that'll actually almost kill me on the way down. You see what I'm saying? So it's maturity means I don't have to necessarily, because we'll complain.
Oh, we always.
Yeah, we'll complain. It's a far route. It's hot. It's whatever. And it's just anyway, I'm rambling.
No, that's good, man. I feel like hearing you say what your mother went through, it just really touched me in a way that's powerful. I feel like that's why it's important for us to lean into the Spirit, lean into God in a way, because people are watching. Our lives are like testimonies. People paying attention. They may not be asking questions, but they gathering information.
Yes.
I see how your faith is in these circumstances.
Yeah.
And that aroma prayerfully tracks.
My mom said that. She said, fashion your life after the word. You have to know the text, because your life might be the only Bible that someone gets a chance to read. So that's why your life has to be fashioned after the word. You don't take the text and make it fit you. You shape your life to fit the text, and your life might be the only Bible someone gets a chance to read, or it will at least spark the conversation for them. They're going to read the Bible. You see what I'm saying? So
for sure, they're like, that fruit, these fruits,
you cannot deny fruit. You cannot deny fruit.
That's good. I know. So we've covered a lot. What does this current season look like for you in terms of music, ministry? When you gonna plant your first church? I'm just kidding.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that, brother.
When you going? Yo, man, y'all didn't have this brother speak at y'all church. I feel like you should be leading worship and doing giving the word.
No, man. I
feel like you have a lot to say, man. You have a lot of perspective, man. I feel like it's helpful. It's refreshing. You talk about fresh water. I feel like, I don't know if that's something that you ever see yourself doing, or
I think I'll come on more podcasts and talk before I preach anybody.
You're gonna preach from here,
right?
I don't think I'm a preacher, man. I think I hang around very, very smart people and people that love Jesus, and I think you hang around those people long enough, something rubs off. So,
is there anything else you wanted to leave the people with, man? Whether that's where to find your music currently and or things got coming up on the way.
The Good Shepherd is everywhere. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, all the things. But I'll tell you the same thing my mom always told me: stay with the Lord. That's it. You can't go wrong if you do that. Stay with the Lord. Fashion your life after His word. You'll be all right. I promise. If you don't have covering, ask the Lord to lead you to covering. Don't just go and seek out covering, but ask the Lord to lead you to the covering that he's assigned to you and that he's assigned you to. I think that's the biggest point.
That's good.
I think that was one of the main things I prayed about. I'm like, Lord, I don't want to go to a person and say, hey, will you cover me? I'm like, no, lead me to where I'm supposed to be.
Sure.
Because if you lead me there, you'll sustain me there. If I leave myself there, I'm responsible for sustaining myself there. And I don't have the power to do that.
I feel it, man.
So, yeah.
Man, this has been great, man. We'll be back with y'all next week. This is the 116 Life, Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. I'm here with Meah Evans, Joel Barnes.
Thank you for having me.
Go stream The Good Shepherd. Go tap in. Appreciate y'all. Until next time.